Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Hired, where we speak with incredible leaders about their unconventional journeys to success. I'm your host, Mike Thompson, and on today's show, we welcome Julia Cartwright, Chief People Officer at GroupBy. Julia discusses the valuable lessons she learned about the challenging nature of the real world and the importance of being prepared. Additionally, Julia shares where her financial savviness comes from and the qualities that make a leader worth following. There's a lot to unpack, so sit back and enjoy, and let's meet Julia.
So Julia, take us back to the beginning, childhood. What was it like? What was the house like? Where did you grow up? What did mom and dad do? Any siblings? Paint us a picture of childhood for you.
Yep. I'm very lucky. So I had two very young parents. They had me when they were like each 19 years old. And so the age gap was never really big between us. And it showed up in how they parented when we were younger, my sister and I. Lots of energy. They did everything with us, you know what I mean? Camping and skiing and all kinds of things. So that was really great. I was born and raised in Kitchener till I was 9. Then the family moved to North Bay, Ontario. And I have a sister who is a couple years younger than me, Stephanie. My dad was a salesperson or is a salesperson. My mother is a nurse. And so we just had it wasn't like the most kind of high class upscale life, but it was a really good life. We were really close. And, even to this day, we're a very close family. I can't remember a time when we ever fought or, we have disagreements and things like that. But what I've seen kind of happen in other households, I'm just like, whoa, that would never skate. So for example, people can, say bad words or things like that, but you can't ever say the word like shut up. So for example, for my mother, I got taught really early that, I think people have the tendency to be hardest on their family first because, the outside world can be a challenging place. And my mother's like, no, like your family is the most important and we're going to treat each other with respect, even when we're upset or whatever. And so I would say she was pretty instrumental in just teaching that respect, teaching about boundaries, teaching about, just manners, common courtesy, how to treat people. How to treat people well, regardless of status, whether you're a CEO, whether you're, a janitor, every person is the same and you treat them, with respect. And so, I got a lot of the, I would say, baseline people skills and learning that definitely carried on to my later roles in life from her. So no, really, really great life. When I hit I always thought my personality and my desires just far exceeded the place I grew up. So the minute I was 20, I was out of there. There was nothing wrong. I mean, I love my parents, awesome. But I just knew that it was just too small of a place for my very budding, bold personality. Started with university, left there, went to Laurentian in Sudbury. I wanted to be away from my parents, but not too far because, I could visit them at any time. But the minute that was done, there was no place other than Toronto I had to go. So I took my best friend and I said, we're going to Toronto. We do not have jobs. We know nobody. We have no plan. We have no place to live. But we're going because my roommate at the time knew some guy and he was happy to have us sleep under a futon underneath his foosball table while we got our feet kind of wet in the city. And honestly, everything that I have done, I've been in Toronto since 1999. Everything that I've done from then to now, it has been curated and crafted and designed at the fit of my own hand. Nobody gave me anything. I did everything myself. And I think another thing my young parents also taught me was that, independence really early. Because remember, they were, a lot of kids, they don't know what it's like to have your dad come to you, you know what I mean, when you're like 9 years old and say, hey, it's mom's 28th birthday and she wants the David Bowie album, or like, should I get her this album? Like, and I remember helping my dad with that stuff. So we just I was really independent at a very young age. And that's it. So moving to Toronto was a huge leap. It was a complete turn from everything that I had ever known. I got a job in retail at Sporting Life. My roommate and I both did. We got a little money, then got a little apartment. Then I started thinking about what I'm going to do with my life as a Bachelor of Science graduate. And I basically studied psychology and sociology. Heard that finance was the way to go. I took my Canadian securities course, got a job in a call center at AIM Trimark, did that for like about, 4 years, decided, okay, it's time for me to get into different things. I launched into marketing communications. And then I was about 25 years old and everything kind of stopped. And I thought, okay, like, is this it? Like, I live here, I have an apartment, like, what do I want to do with my life? Like, how do I really want to make an impact? And then I discovered executive coaching. So like 25 years old, I was like the youngest person to ever go through there. Spent my thousands of dollars, went through a really kind of rigorous training program and got my designation. At that point, I decided I was going to quit. I'm like, no, coaching is what I want to do. Love it. This is a great way to help people. But, you really there's a beginning and an end. So it's not like, and I'm not dismissing, psychologists or anything like that, but I always questioned, I'm like, people go see very highly decorated mental health professionals for a lot of issues, but are all those issues, do they really require, that, right? And is it just somebody with the right skill set to ask the right questions and really lean in, and then have a start to finish that you can see somebody really transform and then do really good things with their life. And so I just believed in that. And so I started doing that. I just loved it, got really charged up. I was at the end of my practicum for the executive coaching. And I said, hey, quit my job. I'm doing this full time, people. Like, just get the name out there. Woman in there said, listen, I think you're great. I work for a big company. I'm the head of HR. I think you should probably, take this HR job I got coming up. I said, like, I just told you I quit. I'm out. I want to do my own thing. And she says, well, listen, she goes, no harm, no foul. You're trying to build this business. It's a mat leave. It's a year. You're in, you're out. You can still build your practice. I mean, this is a win-win. I said, okay, when you put it that way. Then I launched into HR and I never looked back. I never looked back because all of the fundamentals that I learned through coaching really leaned in and translated so well in the space of HR in a way that, in my mind, I always thought I can change the way people look at HR. I can change the way HR is perceived at the table by showing up differently. And what I mean by that is my experience with HR up until that point are just order takers, sit in the corner, low value, very binary, follow the letter of the law, like non-dynamic, no, they're not partners. And I thought, this is a people role. Like, this is a people role. So why are most of these people, these like dried up, uninteresting, uninspiring people in a people role? So I thought, no, I'm going to change this. And I went in and I told my boss and I said, after being in there for about a year, and then I got offered a full-time role and I joined the team permanently. I said, you know what, I'm going to change the game. And she goes, well, how are you going to do that? I said, one conversation at a time. That's what I'm going to do. And I've been doing that since I was like 28 years old, essentially. I'm now 46. I've had an amazing career in HR. I've worked in every setting you can imagine, from Fortune 500 companies to agencies. And now I'm here in a tech startup. I've been here for 4 years. This is the hardest job I've ever had in my life. I've never cried so much. I've never gotten so frustrated. I just can't describe it. It's really hard. And when I go to my CEO and I say, man, this is hard, he goes, of course it is. And if it was easy, everybody would do it. But this isn't for everybody. And I think that's very true. Despite how hard it is, what keeps me motivated every day is through this process of being the head of HR at a Starbucks. Sorry, very top of mind. Aside from being the head of HR in a startup company, this was the moment for me where I had realized I had done the big box stuff. I had done the big institutional stuff. I had done the Fortune 500 stuff. And the one thing I found really disenchanted about all of that is that ability to feel like you're not making an impact. And I just got to a point at about 42 and I was just like, listen, I'm working way too hard. I've done way too much. My kids watch me work really hard. And if I'm going to spend this time away from my kids and people I love very much, it has to mean something. And I will tell you that that's what I think I've learned that in startup life. You have to want this. You have to have the grit. You have to be who you say you are in terms of your craft mastery to do this. And that was my challenge to myself with accepting this role when I had other roles offered to me on the table. I took the path of most resistance and the thing I wasn't exposed to. And it's been the reason why it was so challenging is because we are talking about serious mindset shifting. Are we going from the kind of the foosball beer fridge, like everyone having a good time, we're a family, or are we trying to build a business? My CEO told me he wanted to build a business and transform the ping pong and the foosball family culture into that. That's a heavy lift. That's not simple. Mm-hmm. So the first 2.5 years were absolutely grueling. And again, leaning into that one conversation at a time. Listen, let me paint the picture for you. This is what we're trying to do. Things are going to change around here. We need to mature and just really doing my best to like take people along. There was a lot of resistance from some people, the wrong people who are no longer here anymore. And then we had to decide who we wanted to be, right? Mm-hmm. And so really leaning into the employees and asking them like, what do you want? What does the ideal workplace work for you? And really working with them. So, you know, I reflect, you know, it'll be 5 years for me in August here. And what I've loved the most, again, is I like hard work and I like making a difference. I love that I can be really strategic, but also, hey, get in the weeds if I need to and not be precious about it. So I was happy to learn I'm not precious, you know, despite my career journey so far. So that was good. The other thing was just, you know, really the chance and the opportunity to lean in all the way in. You know, my CEO is right beside me. My CFO is on the other side. I'm an active player. They validate me. They really listen and take my counsel into consideration. So I really felt valued there. Also, and finally, and most importantly, the impact. So every decision that is made has a ripple effect, and you're going to know if you hit it very quickly. You're also going to know if you failed really quickly. And what I love is that ability to pivot. Whoops, we went a little too far ahead of our skis on this thing over here. I'm going to pull that back. Mm-hmm. Let's recalibrate. Let's start again. So that's it. And so now, you know, at 46, 5 years now at the startup, when I think about what's left for me in my future, I struggle to see myself going back to a big box entity again. I really struggle with that. I think I'll always find myself in an environment like this. I know I can do it. I know I can make it. I know I can absolutely transform a company. Example, when I got here, this awesome company where everyone was having so much fun and it was great and we're a family. Yeah, the engagement score was 51%. Took that feedback, did some things. Next year, 71%. Took some feedback, did some things, 82%. Now, this is year one of the pandemic. So I thought, whoa, okay, that's interesting. The last 2 years, 92%. I let the employees speak for themselves. Like, the numbers don't lie. We are absolutely trending in this direction. And, I mean, how did we do that? There's a lot of reasons, but I think mostly is really getting clear on who GroupBy wants to be. What are our corest values that are non-negotiable? And when we hire for this without exception. Without exception. And the most important, I would say, is the no jerks allowed. You can check a website. It's on every job description. And I'm very fanatical about that. The reason is because if we're working in an environment this hard, in my opinion, my employees deserve to work in a place where it is happy, where there's no drama, no toxic, totally inclusive, and get all the noise and nonsense out of the way so people can just focus on doing good work. And although I kind of thought that might have been a little bit of a utopia and a little bit of a high lift, that's what we have.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, that comes with the support of my CEO about, yes, Julia, I'm aligned. This is what, I want you. This is what I want. It also comes with our mid-level leaders that are like, do you buy into this? 100%. So everyone is sort of buying in. It's not just Julia says, so this is what we're going to do. I'm like, do you believe that this is what we can do? And it's paid off. So, in about 15 minutes, that's me.
Yeah. And I think it was great. And I appreciate the context. And I think where I want to take the conversation is you're very proud, rightfully so, of your impact and what you've been able to do at GroupBy. That's a great story. I want to know you and how you got here to this point. So what decisions, what moments in your life led you to this point? So in terms of going back, you talked a lot about grit, talked about making an impact and kind of caring for that. Where did that come from? Where did that mentality come from? What moment can you trace back where either you didn't have an impact or you didn't like it that kind of caused you to think, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to be getting more of in my life?
Such a great question. Again, when you go back to my childhood, like I was born bold. I always heard whoa, like your 9-year-old is actually like a 30-year-old trapped in a 9-year-old's body. So I was always a little bit ahead of my time.
If you're listening to David Bowie at 9, then you're way ahead of your time.
No, buying my mother for her 28th birthday and yes, listening to her, like my mom and I have the exact same music taste, right? Like, George Michael, Thriller, like, all this kind of stuff. So anyway, so having really young parents and just because they were young and they were working and doing the things, like for us, they were still young. And so it just caused us to be more independent, right? Like they weren't these helicopter kind of parents. It's not that they left us in the lurches and we're waking up in closets, you know what I mean? Under coats or anything like that. Nothing like that. But I mean, they were young and they were figuring their own stuff out. And so everyone was sort of developing on their own and independent. So I think a lot of that, just some basic attributes from my parents were huge, right? The independence at a really young age, my own personality, my fearlessness. I've always been pretty bold. I've always been the person saying the things that everyone is thinking, but nobody is saying. So, these types of things. So I think there was a decent baseline there.
Did you feel responsible at that point, young, kind of your younger sister? Did you feel that you had to be a role model and you had to set a path? Was there any pressure or expectation you put on yourself to be a certain way because of having a sibling look up to you? Or
first of all, she didn't look up to me. She was just, we were very, very different. Everything from the way we look and our personalities, we couldn't be more opposite. To this day, it's really interesting. Would I ever choose my sister? And I think, and she'll say the same thing about me. Would I ever choose her now in my life to be my best friend? No, because we're very different. Are we close? Yes. Why are we close? Because the baseline values of my family system are within both of us, how we see respect, love for family, work ethic, this type of thing. Right. So, no, I never felt that. My parents never pushed anything on it. Remember, my mom was a nurse. She went to school when she was 30. Okay. So like up until that point, she was I remember that. And a lot of people, it's really interesting. Like the things I went through at 30, when I think back and I'm like, I watched my mother do that. I was 11 years old when she came through the door at about 9:00, drunk. Never happens. That she does not do that. She came through the door, drunk, 30th birthday, and she's like, I got a big announcement. I'm like, what? And she says, I've quit my job. I'm not going to be a secretary anymore. It's time to live my dream, and I'm going to become a nurse. And we're like, okay. Went to bed, woke up, and we're like, why don't you go to work? She goes, no, I told you I quit. I'm going to be a nurse. And she just did it. So I was just so impressed, with wow, you know what I mean? And so
the conviction and purpose.
Absolutely, right? Like life has to mean something. So again, all of these things were percolating in my childhood. Okay, so then you sort of get into the business world of things. First of all, how I'm going to answer the question about like, how do you become the way that you are and everything, by find a mentor. Mentors are everything to me. They were everything to me. I believe nobody gets there alone. If people don't have mentors, find one. They're critical. Example, there are 3 people that transformed me, that put their claws into me in my early 20s, where given my personality, I could have went in many different directions. I could have been the person that is sorry to say it, but the ball buster and take people out of the knees to get things done. I could have been the person that needed to win at all costs at the expense of others. 100%. Yeah. Despite my great upbringing and value system, in terms of my desire to be successful in life, and I'll get into where that comes from in a little bit.
Sounds more like ambition, like you were very ambitious. Yeah.
Like, just again, the girl in North Bay, it's not good enough. I want to be in Toronto. Okay, I'm in retail. That's not good enough. Like, what's next? It's always like that. Like, what comes next? What comes next?
But before you jump in there, where did that come from? Where it was never good enough. And not to say that it wasn't good enough, but you were always reaching. And when you arrived, you never arrived. It was always a step to something else. Where did that come from?
That to me is such an interesting question, and one that I've unpacked in many different ways. And as I've unpacked it, I actually drilled down to the moment. So there was a moment where I think a lot of young kids go through, and they're looking to fit in, and they want to be cool and things like that. And so it's like, hey, mom and dad, I want this Roots, sweatshirt, and I want these penny loafers, and I want the polo shirt, because, I'm looking to kind of fit in, like a lot of people do, right? When you're in that young age. And then I remember my parents always saying no. And I always heard a lot of the times, we can't afford it, because, we're putting your mom through school. Like, my dad at the time, by the way, was like a truck driver, putting my mom through school and selling off things that he loved, like his boat. So again, that's another theme, like sacrifice, right? Like, we're doing this for mom, and, everything like that. So we had everything we needed, but it was one of those, like, when you go to the store, it's like, oh, hey, mom, can I have this? Nope. Wait for your birthday. Nope. Wait for Christmas. Nope. We can't afford it. We had a very good life with good things, but there wasn't like a lot of room for the extras or like everything. And so that also kind of parlayed into my independence, because I thought, okay, I want to get what I want to get, right? And I didn't feel my asks were unreasonable, not like a lot of kids today, like my own, who drop their iPad, crack it, and go, Mom, I need an iPad, this kind of stuff, right? I'm talking about like different things. So I remember one time I went to my dad and I said, Dad, this is it. Like, listen, I'm tired of my shoes. I need some new shoes. There's these black shoes I want, Doc's like, I just like, I want them. So and he goes, well, tell me why you need them. We just got you a pair of shoes and went back and forth. And finally he's like, slaps down his bank account, like his book, like his banks, like at the time they had like bank books, or I guess, or whatever.
Yeah.
So he slapped it down in front of me and he goes, look at that number in there. And I remember looking at $48. And he says, now that number has to last us until, this was like a Tuesday, that number has to last us till Friday. So when you say you want a pair of shoes, that's what, and I say no, that's what I'm dealing with. Does that make sense? That was, I remember like a lightning bolt shooting through me, actually.
How old were you? How old were you at that point?
I think I was like 12 or 13 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, that would have been right, because my mom went back to being a nurse, and that's when things got a little tighter, right? Yeah, because my dad for 3 years, like to support mom being a nurse. Killed it, by the way, top of her class, loved it. You know what I mean? It was well worth it. She had a dream, and she went after it, and she crushed it. But I remember him showing that, and I thought to myself, wow, welcome to real life. Things like it was like, so that was a really,
you grew up in that moment. Like that's immediately you go from 12 to 25. Like it's like, 100%. Okay, this is life.
100%. So you guys think I'm 12 acting 30? You're about to see 30. Let me show you how it's done. So then it went into, okay, like, again, it wasn't a punitive conversation. It was just like, babe, this is it. Like, this is just the deal. Like, it wasn't, he was just threadbare and honest. This is where we are. So I was like, okay. And then what that taught me really was like, okay, I'm 13, 14, like I can get a job. And then that was where it was like, okay, got a job at McDonald's. Like everyone's like, oh no, you're so tall. You're talented in sports. Like join the volleyball team in high school. I'm like, no, I'd rather make money. And so making money, babysitting jobs, paper routes, McDonald's, like I did all that. And then I could just get whatever I wanted. So if I wanted, and again, we're not talking like, even to this day, I'm not a Prada purse wearer. I'm not like, I don't care about that. I can afford a Burberry bag. I can afford a Mercedes. I just don't care. Those things don't mean anything to me. What means something, and what my North Star always is, which I think that moment with the bank book taught me, was security. I just want to live a life where I just don't need to worry. I don't need to think about that. If my son yesterday says, hey, mom, by the way, I want to go on this camping trip at the end of the year. It's 3 days. It's $230. Okay. Hey, mom, I'm really interested in basketball, but like there's this elite program, whatever. It's like double the cost, whatever. Okay. You know what I mean? Like put my dog in daycare twice a week. Buy groceries. Like.
So it's interesting because most parents, when they look back at their own experience of, you having to get you going out and getting a job at McDonald's at 13. And I want to know, just planting the seed, when you got that first paycheck of your first job, what did you, and we'll get into my question, but I want to know a segue. What did you buy? And you get your check, you've worked 2 weeks, then there's a delay. So you've been working a month and you get your first 2-week check. What was that moment and what did you go and buy?
Mike, you're going to die. That's what I mean. Like, I got the check. It was $78.36 for like 3 shifts or something like that. 2 shifts. I took it and I put it in the bank. And that's what I did with a lot of my stuff. So even to this day, and my CEO will die because he'll be like, oh my God, just get that wine, Julia. It's $200 a bottle. It's fine. I'm like, don't be ridiculous because we're spending GroupBy money. Like we're out, right? So he goes, I can always count on you to be frugal. Listen, I love to spend money, but I don't like wasting money. It drives me insane. So I'm huge about value, right? I'm value. So what's really interesting is my children have a very blessed life with a very heavy side dish of you are privileged. And when you can, you're going to get a job. And you're going to do this because the sooner you shake hands with real life, the less traumatic it's going to be for you when you get in the workforce and people around you, bosses, colleagues, tell you, that, and this could kind of go in a different tangent, but you experience for the first time that you're not all you think you are, and that your ideas aren't all that they're cracked up to be, or you know what I mean, like different things. The real world can be harsh, and I want you to be ready. I just want you to be ready. That's it. So I always teach them about, like, you get this, but there's a price to pay. Like,
Right.
I'm going to buy this for you. So, like I said this to last night, I was like, I'm happy. $230. Awesome. No, not a problem. By the way, you just earned yourself 10 extra hours with the dog over the next month that I don't have to do. Right. Like, so it's always like, there's always something. I always throw in something because, again, I never had that privilege where, hey, mom, dad, I want, I need, and I just got it. I just didn't. And I'm fine about that. So yeah, I am the most, it's funny, my CEO calls me frugal. He says, like, I am the most frugal person, but then I go to Paris with my girlfriends. I'm loving the moment. I'm so in love with them. And I drop $1,000 on a dinner. Like, not a problem. Like, you know what I mean? So, but that's not wasting money. That is like investing in such an amazing experience. So that's what I mean. But yeah, like, I don't, like, I'm just not interested in like $300 pants, and it's just not me. I'd rather, because again, going back, the anchor for me is security. I punch within a certain weight class, so I just never worry about it. I don't want to worry about it. My parents worried about it. They made decisions around it. I couldn't do things because we didn't have it. We didn't take vacations with, like, on planes. I took my first plane ride at 25 years old. Like, we just didn't. My kids now, holy smokes, Jamaica, St. Lucia. I mean, they're great. Oh, we don't have 24-hour room service in Robes. Oh, you didn't get the royal package? Like, Jesus. So you have to be careful you're not creating monsters, right? Which I'm very fanatical about. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you never got the Doc Martens. You never ended up getting the black pair of Doc Marten shoes with your first, or did you get them with the paycheck?
So hear me. So I did want them, and I was prepared to buy them. I actually was. I built up some, but I just didn't want to spend it all. And then it was like several months later, and I think by now I probably have, like, I don't know, 2,000 in the bank or something like that. And my grandma came and she goes, "Listen, I know you've always wanted this. I know your parents aren't going to do it. So come to Ottawa and let's go get you your docs, because you can get them in North Bay." Even went to Ottawa, and I'm like about to, like, reluctantly part with my money. And she's like, "Put it away. I got this." So grandma bought me my Doc Martens and my, what were those called? Those Dean jacket. Like, they were black with, like, the checkers around. What the heck were they called?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Bomber.
Yeah.
So that was the look for sure. No, so she ended up buying for buying them for me. But yeah, like, I was prepared to do it, but, like, it hurt. It hurt to do it. Right. I also understood really, really young, like, the value of the dollar, right? Things like that. Yeah.
I was going to say, do you think seeing your mom kind of take the risk, go back to school, start a second career at 30, and excel at that, and see her take a risk and pay off, did that give you the freedom and flexibility to say, yes, like, it's valuable to take risks. If you work hard, you can take a risk and it will work out. Like, do you think that was fundamental for you deciding to leave Thunder Bay to go to Laurentian, to leave Laurentian to go to Toronto, to leave your executive coaching job to take a job in HR? Like, do you feel like you had more freedom and flexibility to take risks because of what you witnessed your mom go through?
To answer that honestly, if that played a part, it was subconscious. I never, I never connected that. I just haven't. I can connect my desire for security to that bank book. I can connect that. That is a very clear line. Maybe, maybe, but I just haven't. I didn't think about it that way. It could be that. It could be just a series of just different things as well, right? my dad made some bold moves too. Like once my mom was settled, he's like, okay, because again, these weren't educated people. They were people that just, worked, try to make an honest living. But when my mom had planted the landing and got her first job as a nurse and, she kind of was finding her way, my dad's like, okay, it's my turn. Like, I am not going to be a truck driver forever. And so my dad was always like, he left home at 15. He left home at 15, hitchhiked across Canada 3 times. He needs to write a book. It will blow your mind. It's a Netflix series, 100%. And then, all the stories he has. So like, you want to talk about growing up, like he grew up on the road hitchhiking. Like imagine that, like in the 70s, right? And still come out alive. So he's like, it's my turn. And so he kind of tapped into that sort of gritty survival kind of self and approached this business and said, okay, it's an exterior business, like aluminum siding and different things like that. And he's like, okay, listen, you have a really great product. Who's selling this stuff? And they're like, well, we don't have a sales product. It sells itself. He goes, nothing sells itself. He goes, give me a chance. Pay me X and give me a shot and I'm going to do this. And they did. So, and then 6 months later, so he's like, give me this base. And then, this is it was like a really nominal sort of commission. And he literally blew them out of the water. They had to hire new stuff. And they said, okay, we need to change this because this isn't like going to work. So how about you work on commission only? My dad's like, sure. So he did, and pulling in like by North Bay standards, a very high money, like a very healthy, like $250,000 a year. I mean, for North Bay, that was huge, right? So like now, you fast forward, you got these people that really were grinding it out, and by their mid 30s to 40s, like they were on their way. Like mom was a nurse, dad was in sales, and they were on their way. But by the way, nothing changed, right? It was still, well, here's what changed. So my sister comes home and, life is getting a little good and things like that. They're still not like, no, wait for birthday and Christmas, like nothing really changed there. But my sister came home and she goes, okay, dad, I got to tell you something. And this was huge. She goes, there's a stereo I want. It's $1,700. And my dad was like, you are out of your mind. Like never going to happen. She goes, okay, if I work and I get half of the money, will you pay the other half? And he's like, 100%. Good luck in the finals. And she freaking did it. And he ended up paying the other half. And so that became the new normal too. Okay, we like this. You want something big, like pay half. And so that I kind of was a new thing that's what came out of the genesis of having more money around is, yeah, if you want something, we're going to pay $40 on jeans. If you want Guess jeans, you need to pay the other half. And so that's kind of how it was. Right. And so, yeah, these money responsibility was a huge theme. And again, that's security, which is why I'm very responsible with my money. You know what I mean?
I also see a great theme of, your parents, like they bet on themselves. They fully bet on themselves and their ability
1,000%.
to get it done. And hearing your story, foundationally, that's the thread through your entire story is you bet on yourself.
100%.
Like it was,
100%.
you can do this, and nobody's going to get in my way. If I believe it, then I know it's going to be a lot of hard work because you witnessed your parents work hard, but by betting on themselves and having confidence in their abilities, succeed. And that's where it came up. No school, no PhDs, no MBAs. It's hard work and bet on yourself. And that's keys to success.
You know what, Mike, you say that. And again, this is a very unpopular opinion for me, but this especially came through in my journey, at Accenture. Because I mean, Accenture it's a phenomenal company. I want to be clear, when I start dropping names of different companies I work for, I do with love and respect from whatever that entity taught me. But the one thing about Accenture that I saw all the time, it's like, it was just MBAers, like MBAers. Well, this person has an MBA. This person has an MBA. We're, there's 10 new recruits, but these 5 have MBAs. So we're going to get the MBAs. And I just like, why is this important? Because suddenly these MBAers like would show up and I'm like, this person is a massive waste of time. Like they, like they don't know how to make a decision, like to save their lives. So it was through that where I was like, whoa, we're putting like way too much emphasis on education here, because it's what you do with it. So again, like as a recruiter, I have to tell you, I rarely, I would say 5% of the time, I look at educational background. If I see an MBA on there, it does nothing for me. Nothing. It just depends on what you do with it. I've met people that have taken MBAs or come from great pedigree and do absolutely incredible things. But if you think that's the norm, it's absolutely not. And that came really home for me when I was at Accenture, because Accenture, it is a high volume, really, really huge projects, lots of consultants on these projects, things like that. And if you don't get deployed, you're on the bench. If you stay on the bench too long, then I need to terminate you. Sadly, my nickname there was the Angel of Death. Sadly, but it's like that movie Up in the Air. If you saw me coming, it was like, oh dear. But what that experience taught me was, and what kind of terrified me, because at that time I was pregnant with my second child, and the amount of time I told a young person with pedigree background, private schools, summer camps, MBAs, and everything, that you're terminated because we don't have like a place for you. And realizing in that moment, holy smokes, I am the first person who ever told you you're not good enough. That to me was terrifying. And I saw it time and time again. Like, I'm not even joking. I terminated some young guy. His girlfriend comes in to yell at me the next day. Like, yells at me. You can't fire my boyfriend. I thought, what is happening? So again, like after I've had kids too, I was just like, you can't be that guy. Like you can't do that. Like, there is no way I'm going to let my children go out in the wild with this false sense of I don't even want to, like, perfection or whatever, because again, that's not, and again, it's not like these young people were bad, but maybe it wasn't the right environment for them or whatever, right? I'm not dismissing the education or anything like that. I don't want to be dismissive of that. What I'm saying is it's not everything. That's all I'm saying. There is, you have to parlay that. If you are going to have this amazing pedigree background, you know what I mean, with education, it doesn't excuse you for not having the goods. Like, and the goods meaning like the kind of the street smarts element, how to navigate politics, how to manage up, how to focus on your brand, how to play nice in the sandbox with others, honing in on your communication skills. All of these things are critical. And like I've said to people, and being in HR, I need to tell you, if I have terminated, sadly, 2,000 people, which probably would be on the low end, in my career, maybe 10 were because they couldn't do a job. They were unable to do the job, like a complete and total misfire of gross calculations. People lose their jobs because of how they do the job. But nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about, like, it's okay to be really brilliant at your craft. But if you're making everyone around you, feel inferior and you speak nasty and you know what I mean, you're hard to work with and you're unreliable, like that's not okay. So again, that's one of these things in GroupBy education. Excellent. You've proven to us you're a great back-end developer. Perfect. Love that. Now let's check into this human side here. So how does so-and-so show up when they're in a bad mood? How does so-and-so show up when you don't get your way? How does so-and-so, like, these are the things that matter and nobody talks about it. And I just think it's one of the worst things that we can do. I don't know why in universities programs that they talk about this, because they need to talk about this.
Yeah, well, it's hard, and I think we'll use the MBA as an example. You can use any certification or any educational background. Yeah. It's a I'm going to say lazy. I'm going to say it's a lazy way to symbolize hard work, and that's what it was overvalued for. Is if you had got your MBA and achieved that, you can work hard to achieve something. And you automatically assume anybody that has that is a hard worker. Whereas if they don't, it's not as objective to understand the work ethic of somebody to do that. So they made a binary decision. MBA, hard workers. Non-MBAs, you're not a hard worker. And there was no room for an expansion beyond that. And now I think we're getting better at understanding, hey, there are more than one way to signify how somebody's work ethic is. And I'm using work ethic as an example, but you can use any criteria you need. And now it's not just tied up into one thing. Everybody has their own story. Everybody's different. Everybody gets there in a different way. And that's the goal of recruiters, is understanding people's story to understand who they are and aligning them to the right opportunity at the right time instead of just checking boxes.
Absolutely. And I remember there was somebody here who said to me, and just, they were having a crusty moment. And they were just like, no, Julia, we need to hire this person because it's pedigree. He kept using the pedigree because he came from pedigree, and I couldn't stand it. Like, it was just, and I've used it a few times in this, but I can't stand it. So
well, put it this way. I mean, even in your story, if your dad was applying for that sales job with his resume, no chance he makes it through an applicant tracking system or even gets an interview. But he was the best individual for the job and proved it. And like, I will take that individual over a great resume any day based on
100%.
where they are and what drives them, like that. And you know, it's we've come a long way, and your story signifies that. Like that's the beauty of where you are now and your view on how you are. You know, you're attached to GroupBy and you're growing this and making an impact, and it is shaped by your experience and what you've seen and what you lived through. And it's amazing to see that. I mean, seeing your parents go through that is showing up today in terms of how you're looking at bringing talent into the organization. And to me, that is really cool.
Wow, look at you getting all heavy, deep, and real. I mean, I've done a lot of self-work, a lot, I've just been, I've done programs and retreats, and I've, all in the goal of really just kind of understanding myself. But it's interesting. I've never, until this conversation, really, I guess I just assumed, subconsciously, like I said, a lot of course, what your environment, like your nurture component, played a part in me, of course. But to actually, for you to actually connect the dots and go, your upbringing, what you're putting, what you're making, what you're doing at GroupBy, I guess you're right. I mean, it is my belief systems. It is my values that, has changed the game. But again, they're just mine. And like an opinion, everybody's got them. But that's why I've always made sure that, I can always check my pride and ego. And I'm a very we winning person, not a me winning person. And also, when it comes to GroupBy and when it comes to being a leader, it stops becoming about you. And you just have to, take people along and, instill these values in others. But it would be all for nothing if the employee said, no, we're everything that you're putting out there, we're not buying. It means nothing if my CEO says, I don't support you, Julia. I don't. So you're on your own here. So that's what I mean. I'm just a person that came in somewhere and gave it my best shot, leveraging my background, my skills, my experience, my upbringing, and it paid off. Yay me. But it might not have. I didn't know. I find it tricky sometimes. People how did you do it? You're talking about people that you could work in this. If I had 10 sexual harassment cases in my entire life, they're all different because they're all different people. There's no book for this stuff, right? That's what I mean. You have to me, to be a really great leader, yes, you have to, be the person at the front, kind of doing the things and making decisions, but you can't be so bold and arrogant in your own kind of values and beliefs to not consider that of others. Because here's the truth. If leadership is half the story. If you don't have followership, people don't follow you. Nothing.
Yeah.
You're just someone preaching on an island, right? Like, so you have to get that. Like when people say, well, good leader, I'm like, to me, a good leader is someone that has followers. Will this person follow that person on the beach of Normandy? If they will, that person to me is a great leader. They've got that followership to back them. If they don't, then you're nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't be that leader if you don't have that we attitude. Like we're all in it together, right? Like I might make a call, but I'm going to check in. And my rule in HR is this: I aim for 90% right. If I get 90% right, 10 people are upset about something, that's okay. That's all right. I mean, you want to make everyone happy, like Steve Jobs says, go sell ice cream. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Don't be a leader. But it's how you manage that 10%, right? It's how you say, hey, like, I know you're really unhappy. Let's throw the ball around. Like, let me really seek to understand here, like why this isn't working for you. And really aim to get to a place like, hey, we might agree to disagree, but that's okay. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's fine. Because again, leadership is my decisions are for GroupBy. But the problem is, I think some people, when they hang too closely to pride and ego, the success it's about them. But for me, if GroupBy wins, then we all win. Then I'm winning. My team is winning.
I love
if GroupBy loses, then nobody wins, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody wins. So GroupBy, my company comes first. Like that's what it always is.
I love that. I love your story. I mean, GroupBy, your family that you're protecting, just like kind of growing up. And I know we're at time, and I want to leave you with this question. Individuals see you online, see your LinkedIn profile. What is the one thing that you want people to know about you that they can't see on your LinkedIn profile?
Holy smokes, you're so good. Okay, it's the first thing that comes to mind. So, no, there's two things. First one is what you see is really what you get. I'm about as real, transparent, and genuine as it gets. I put all my flaws out there. When a mistake happens, I use it as a learning opportunity. You know what I mean? I always try to better myself. So just being really authentic is, the one thing about me. And the second, as it relates to, I always think about when that day comes and I retire, how do I want to be remembered? Like what would be on my corporate epitaph, right? And the word stewardship is right there in neon lights. Leaving something better than I found it. That's what motivates me every single day. With every human interaction, with every crucial conversation, with every really tough and unpleasant decision, with how we're guiding the company, make this place better than I left it.
On that note, and the recording, that was brilliant.
Thanks so much for watching. If you liked today's episode, please follow along and hear more great stories from us. Make sure to follow Spark Recruiting on YouTube and LinkedIn. We'll see you next time.